Welcome to Purpose Driven Church for Unificationists. Today we are starting chapter 10, Knowing Whom You Can Reach, Best Reach. And if you remember from the previous section, Rick Warren is talking a lot about how there's so much variety of people in so many different situations. And different communities and churches have the ability to attract certain kinds of people, but it's not practical to think that you can attract everybody. He says that, I believe that the most effective evangelistic strategy is to first try to reach those with whom you will already have something in common. Makes sense. He also says that there are some types of people your church will never reach because they require a completely different style of ministry than you can provide. Many factors cause people to be resistant to attending your church. Theological barriers, relational barriers, emotional barriers, lifestyle barriers, and cultural barriers. The people your church is most likely to reach are those who match the existing culture of your church. So he says the next important question to ask yourself is, what kind of culture do you have in your church? Because that's going to define what people it attracts. So he says, how do you determine your church's culture? Ask yourself, what kind of people already attend our church? This may discourage some pastors, but it is the truth. Whatever type of people you already have in your congregation is the same type you are likely to attract more of. It is unlikely that your church will attract and keep, with emphasis, many people who are very different from those who already attend. When visitors walk into your church, the first question they ask is not a religious one, but a cultural one. As their eyes scan the room full of strange faces, they are unconsciously asking, is there anybody here like me? So, he goes on to name several examples. He talks about how, a young family may come to church and they're kind of looking, are there other young families here? Is this a place where young families, our needs are being met? Is this a place where I can meet other young families that I can relate with and have a relationship with? He says, it's going to be hard if you have a church full of elderly people. Then it's not really realistic to think that you're going to attract a lot of young people. And even though, naturally we want to welcome everybody and be able to be attractive to everybody, we also have to recognize that there is this reality too, that people are looking for something that they can relate with and resonate with. So the next question to ask, besides who is already attending your church and what culture, is what is the cultural background and personality of your church leadership? I'm kind of surprised that he talks about this, but here it is. He says the personal characteristics of your leadership, both paid staff and lay leaders, have enormous impact on your church ministry. Leaders cast long shadows. Many studies have shown that the number one reason people choose a church is because they identify with the pastor. Don't misunderstand this. The pastor does not attract first-time visitors, but he or she is a major reason visitors come back or don't. When visitors identify with the pastor, they are far more likely to return. If you are a pastor, you must honestly ask yourself, what kind of person am I? What is my cultural background? What kind of people do I naturally relate to? And what kind do I have a harder time understanding? So he's kind of using himself as an example. He was saying that he had an experience once where he was helping at a church, and these were people who most of the membership was truck drivers and mechanics. It's kind of interesting. And he said that that's just not the kind of people that he normally relates with. And he had a difficult time having intelligent conversation, connecting with those people. And even though he cared for those people and they appreciated that, it was not exactly a good fit. But he says, on the other hand, he feels right at home with entrepreneurs, businessmen, managers, and professionals. He says, in fact, I've noticed that they are attracted to my ministry. It's nothing I planned, it's just the way God wired me. He says, if God has called you to ministry, then who and what you are must also be a part of that plan. You don't minister in spite of yourself, but through the personality God gave you. You are shaped by God for a purpose. If he has called you to be a pastor, that means there must be people somewhere in the world whom you can reach better than anyone else. He says, you will best reach those you relate to. The easiest people for you to reach are those who are most like you. This is not to say you can't reach people unlike yourself. Of course you can, it's just harder. Your greatest contribution will occur when you match your target. Then you will have an impact by being yourself. And yeah, this is kind of interesting that he talks about this because yeah, it makes me think about, what kind of people are we, and what kind of culture do we have, and what kind of people are we going to attract, or what kind of people have we been attracting, which so far seems to be pretty positive direction, but it's just food for thought. You recognize that you have a deeper um, level of involvement, or like just by being who you are than you thought you did, or at least for me, and it just kind of makes you think, take things a little bit more seriously. He says, as a leader, you'll attract who you are, not who you want. When I started Saddleback Church, I was 26 years old. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get anyone over 45 to join our church. Congregation pretty much matched my age group. It wasn't until I added staff who were older than I was that we began to reach senior adults. And now that as I enter middle age, I'm having to add younger staff to relate to those younger than I am. It's really changing with the situation. He says there are exceptions. There are people who seem to be able to reach a large variety of people. They're able to reach cross-culturally. It's a gift. He says that it's rare. It's not the general rule of thumb, but it does exist. And he just says that sometimes a pastor isn't a match for the situation. If you're trying to reach a certain group of people, then that pastor may not always be well suited for it. And he shares some stories about how a couple times when he moved the pastor from one church to a different church or a different location, then that person who was struggling had a ton of success. So it was kind of interesting. So thanks for listening. Tomorrow we will finish off this chapter. Look forward to it.